we know of other stories where people your same age were in interracial relationships and didn't pursue them because they didn't have the support or the confidence.
Totally.
And so, when I say support and confidence, we are hearing stories right now of grandma, grandpa, and grandma all saying like, hey, here are my concerns. But because you were living in these homes where, we haven't even we mentioned another podcast of like Grandma Williams talking about, not even using the word gay, but people that are different. And there was just
being very
the theme of accepting, clearly to me, even though Dad obviously as a Black man is very aware of what's going on around him and what people might say, but it's almost as if that was your confidence to
because you grew up in an environment that was pretty welcoming.
Right.
So you're like, okay.
Even the fear was, you were like, well, at the end of the day, how much fear do I need to have because you grew up in an environment of welcoming? Like
So then with that, like you're saying, you grew up in this environment of welcoming, like grandma's doing your job of communicating, but yet then grandma and grandpa have still said, they obviously have given Dad's endorsement. He's great. But with the dating or the marriage, the warning, once you get married, like grandpa said, once you get married, I'm not going to mention it again. So then you have kids. And so Lindsay's born in 82. Talk to us a little bit about that. Then are you now thinking like, okay, we're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak, of like, now we have a child, we're waiting to see how people react. Maybe there is something we don't know because,
or you like heads down.
There aren't other kids in this town that look like her.
No, I have to say a couple of the first incidents, I shouldn't say first, but they weren't first. They were people trying to understand how it was to have an interracial child. Like in the pediatrician's office, the nurse, the office manager who would take vitals and stuff in the kids. And she had gotten to know me because the OBGYN was also in the pediatrics office. So I would see her and interact with her. So then she meets this baby because she didn't know I had an interracial.
She's only seeing you at these appointments.
Right. And so then when she meets Lindsay,
she's
who's
like, hold on,
interracial, she didn't say anything. What'd you say?
What up?
She didn't say anything. Of course, she would always say how beautiful and everything, but she felt confident or okay enough as Lindsay got a little older, and then I'm pregnant again, not that much older. She said, how does your community feel about, this was Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. We lived in Maryland. And how does your community feel? How are you treated? And I said, well,
is this a white woman or?
This is a white woman.
Because your doctors weren't white.
No, my doctors were not. They were Filipino. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she said, how do they treat you, or do they treat you differently or whatever? And I explained,
you said, give me my baby.
That he was, part of the community and very well respected, and that we don't have issues. And maybe if we had been in a community where we didn't know anybody, and maybe there would have been some kind of a different reaction. I don't know, but know that we were treated fine. And it's not that I appreciated that she asked. To me, the communication, just like you were saying, your mom, it was better that, just like you were saying, that my mom should have asked. It was good to be able to explain or whatever. And maybe I could have said, oh, it's terrible.
I was going to say, I have to say, especially at a doctor's office.
At a doctor's office.
That is the place that, you do want to check in. And honestly, maybe it was just curiosity, but also, the foresight of like, are there mental health issues? Like, are there other things going on? Like, those.
Well, she was office manager.
She was like the tech or whatever.
Even still,
I don't think she was diving there.
She also was
but it's a good idea.
For non-white people.
Non-white people. And I'm just saying, like, I think opening up the conversation is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
In that type of environment.
And then it was very sweet because I think she felt more comfortable.
Yeah.
And,
she
of
got
course,
confirmation.
I got to know the office well, 1, 2, 3, 4 pretty quickly. And, I felt I felt good. I liked her. I appreciated
Yeah,
her.
it made you feel more seen.
Right.
Yeah, I felt.
What about you then, Dad? Like, where obviously you weren't not. I shouldn't say obviously you weren't at all the doctor appointments 101, but we're
Well, in those times.
Going back to our very first, when Lindsay was, delivered in Gettysburg, your Aunt Poozy, she was in there with Lindsay and all you guys. But when we go over to the hospital and there was some, I don't know if she worked in the nursery. Remember that story? They knew who Joan was. No one had ever seen me.
because Mom had worked at the hospital.
I worked at the hospital.
And this one person that worked in the nursery, when she had seen me, she
said, "You can't be Joan's husband."
No, she said, "Where did she find him at?"
Oh, well, because she probably thought I.
No, she.
Because it might have been a different time.
I'm kidding.
And Poozy went off on her. Don't you ever.
She's like, "You're talking about the wrong person. I'm
Which
more
also-
offended
You're
at
talking-
Rich than I am Joe."
You're talking
And
about
she
my
told me
best
later.
friend.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
told
I was
me
gonna
later.
say.
He was, Poozy grew up in Emmitsburg, and Poozy's family and Richard's family were good friends. They were all best buds, and she became my friend in high school because of basketball. We were on the same team, and she was a scrapper.
She was like, "You're messing with the wrong one."
Yeah.
That was another aspect too we talked about before, that like Mom worked at the hospital where we were born, but also, yes, our
Having
fellow
Aunt Poozy there was-
having her
yeah.
there, yes, has helped. That different topic of the actual birth, but then in that too, the comfort.
The comfort, yeah.
You're not worried about
Oh, the comfort
some
when
nurse.
they're playing jokes on me through the whole labor.
Well, that's different. Keeping it light. But so, what was your
went on a
other
few
than-
2 hours too many long, apparently, and they're like,
Other than
Funny.
that nurse making comments, were you worried when Mom's pregnant? Like, was there this kind of like? Of course, I'm sure every first time parent's a little
Not
anxious.
really,
Or were you
because
worried about community?
Like I say, I've had, I have a lot of cousins, in Gettysburg area, York area, and stuff, and so I wasn't concerned, about the kids. I really wasn't, And of course, I always had the backup of my brothers and friends. I thought, this is going to work because no one's going to let anybody harm me, and I'm not going to let anybody harm, my family,
Right.
So I said, it may be tough, but it's going to work out.
What did that ever change?
I just have to tell this story. Sorry. The thing that Daddy was concerned about us getting married, just as he tells the
Being
story
in a
of
committed
being,
relationship.
just like he tells the story of not going off to Pittsburgh and not going off to other areas, Philadelphia, whatever. He was concerned that I had traveled, and I loved to travel, and I like to see things and the world in a sense. And he's like, I just don't know if we should get married, or I don't know. I don't care if I travel, and you like to travel, and right? Am I
Mom
right?
said, "Then stay put," and I'm packing my
And
bag.
I said, okay, it'll be okay. I said, I've seen the world. I would love to see more of it, but I've seen it, and I'm okay. But I would love for you to see what I've seen, because there's so much more out there than there is just in Maryland. And
then she's like, "I got my Seton girls. We're going on a trip."
but Daddy then was
Turned a corner and here we are in Harris.
I mean, I went to California for Christmas, and then the next thing he's calling and saying, "Well, when are we going? Did you ask when we are going?" So then we did.
Changed
and
the
we
two,
were
changed
able
the two.
to take you
Joni
guys.
said, Don't you worry. I got a plan in mind. Slowly but surely, I'm going to make this your idea."
I didn't say.
Well, so did any of the, like you're saying, you weren't worried about having kids, but did any of that change? Because obviously we know then you guys, the 80s were a blur. From 82 through 87, you then take a break, and then Mimi comes in 98. You're having kids forever. Were there any, as then the more kids you had, the different milestones, were there any turning points where you're like, okay, now I'm worried, or how do we conquer this? Like, did you just like, we're going to handle those
Issues as they
moments,
come?
cross the bridge when we get to it? Or did you feel like parenting wise, you're like, great, the kids can communicate. Now they're asking questions.
Yeah.
What
Are
do
you
we do?
like sitting down and having deep combos, or are you like just
We're going to roll with it.
I think one of the only really thought process that we thought of was sending you to Mother Seton School, the same school that we were both alumni of, mainly because we figured it a good community of people were kind. That was the teaching, to be kind and to love everyone, to love each other, and you could speak about it. You could talk about, that there's a greater power. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about the Catholicism, actually.
Mm-hmm. It was about safety.
It was more about the community of kindness that we wanted you to experience as young people when, that you could just enjoy your childhood and have fun and get to know people who were also kind and, like we were, open, welcoming, whatever. And then we also thought about high school, that we didn't think that you needed to we didn't want you to go to a private high school because the private high schools were farther away. We wanted to be a part of your
community,
high school.
the experience.
We wanted to be there for your games and your shows and all of the things that were happening. But we also wanted you to learn what the real world, in quotes.
Right.
Yeah.
It can't be all kindness.
It's not
and
all
butterflies.
kindness and loving.
Yeah.
And while we were still at home, so that you were able to come and
you're able to see it.
we could see it, we could be there and support you through any of those kinds of things, knowing that you would go off to college and be on your own, that you had already faced a lot of what you needed to as far as in sports. And truly, I think the most learning you learned was through sports with coaches. And
Tough skin.
Tough. And I would say,
racism.
I could go in and I could speak for you, but this is where you need to learn how to speak. So if you're upset about that, then you need to use your voice.
Well, I was just going to say, because it's funny, because when Stacey and I were prepping for this conversation, one of the things that I had written down was communication, was because I think that's such a core of our family. And you saying that right there reminds me of a moment in high school when I was having an issue with the coach and you guys like, you can take this on. And when I was thinking about the communication piece, though, I was thinking of the impact that it's had on all of us, especially doing this podcast, when like our recruiter episode, when I was giving we've had such a reaction to that, corporate America, how do you handle these conversations? And I'm always taken back to you guys having conversations when you come home from work. And we weren't even necessarily involved in the conversation. We were sitting there doing our homework in the living room. You guys are setting the table, making dinner, and just talking about your entire day and debriefing and going back and forth about this person said this, and then, dad being like, well, you should fucking tell him this, and having like playing it out.
He never used
He would never
dropped
He
the
would never
F-bomb.
drop the F-bomb. That would have been me.
Only time your father ever dropped the F-bomb, I knew he was drunk.
Yeah, that's right.
And that wasn't very often.
But I give all that to say, was the communication for you all? Because I think it's a huge base to how we are as adults. But was the communication at home, was it that way because this is how you two just always were as a couple? Or did you amp it up? Yeah. Was there an understanding of like, they need to figure out how to have conversations and hear about these things? Cause I remember like, even we were saying, how do we sit for today? We're usually on a couch. And I said, let's do a table if we can, because mom and dad and our environment was most comfortable. We would end up sitting at the dinner table for 3-4 hours. So really long, I've teed you up way too much, but like, where did your communication style come from? Or was it just, this is how it ended up, or was there ever thought to it?
Well, I think going back to grandma was a communicator. she, we were around Grandma more than Grandpa, because there was times when Grandpa would have to go in to the tunnel, in quotes, for his work
In
the military for 2 weeks at a time. And Grandma was a communicator. She was a teacher type of communicator. And my grandfather was her father was just a kind of a calming person, but he would watch and see things, and he would teach. And I think I learned that communicating and teaching, Daddy and I just communicated because we're both the youngest, and everybody said, "Oh, the youngest never get along. You never make it." Those are the most odd couples that, if you're the youngest, you're spoiled, and two spoiled people can't get along. And we just always talked. We spent more time talking because we were not in bars. We weren't in places. We were driving. You're the listener. That isn't true. Daddy talks, but I'm just saying we did communicate, but it was always respect.
Right.
We love to laugh.
Big on that.
We love to laugh.
Yes. You were big on the you don't talk about your partner. You don't talk about anybody
exactly
behind their back.
And it was also please and thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not waiting. I'm
runs
doing
thicker than water.
Yeah, I'm doing waiting. I'm helping because I love you and I want to, and I thank you for doing that for me. So we both, from the very beginning, it was always, I'll do what you want to do, and you do what if you're having fun, that's great. And then if I'll do what you want to do because you're having fun, so then we're both having fun.
Did you ever too, like Morgan was saying, communication was a big thing. Obviously, us just being a big family was. I mean, you can't.
We talked to you.
Yeah,
a lot.
I actually always we all like we were having group conversations.
Even though we didn't necessarily understand what you were talking about. Like I do think of the work thing. Like we had no understanding of what your days were really like at work. We certainly thought we did because we heard about it, but we were. It's even like now we still make the jokes about. I was going to say someone's name, so I'm like, now I'm not going to, but little jokes that Dad would have from work and stuff. We still make those jokes because we were involved in the conversation.
We liked to share what was going on in our lives, like a little separate reality. From, and think about it. When you were growing up, I was at home for 12 years.
Right.
I didn't work.
Right.
You were just chilling.
Feet up with the 5 kids.
When the call would come at 4:00, I'm not coming home. I'm like,
you were like, I want to jump out the window.
But put a movie on. Get out of my house, kids.
There was no movies.
I was saying no movies. Joni was like,
there were no movies. For a long time. We didn't have movies.
VCR. Yeah.
But
yikes.
We didn't have VCR until you were.
That's what I'm saying. No
we
VCR.
Couldn't afford it. We didn't, but we didn't want movies. We wanted play.
Yeah.
But I wanted to hear what Daddy would, because I had been at home with
you were like, give me the adult version.
Yeah. The adult version. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was great. I loved it. Of course, your father's the best storyteller. So
right. You guys, like we joked that you were just having kids for the decade beyond, but did you always know you wanted to have a bunch of kids? Were you like strategic that you're like, I want to have more kids so they're not the onlys? You know what I mean?
No.
So you would have been fine after me and Jenks.
No. we didn't have to talk about that.
We really didn't. For perfection. Go to 4.
Morgan was the only one that was planned.
Backfired. Oops. Is this on? You're colicky.
There, I was colicky.
Lindsay was 2, and we said it would be nice for her to have somebody, close. You weren't even 2. I mean, you were born when she was 2 when you were born, and so I got pregnant before that, of course, and then the other 2 were not planned either, but we were like, okay, this is okay.
It's all good.
It was all good. And we were like, great, have a full house. I can't tell you how many times in my life I've been asked if I was a teacher, and I would say, no, I'm not a teacher, but I had 4 kids. I'm a teacher.
You are a teacher.
Yeah,
I had
teacher.
5 kids. I'm a teacher.
We saw you on those class field trips. There was a reason why people wanted to be in your group.
Well, yes, and it was the teacher. You had 4 kids, but it was
Had
you
5.
Had 4. Well, I'm saying you ended up. Yes, obviously,
We ended up having 5.
But when you had 4, you were at home. You weren't at home with Mara all day, and so that's what I'm saying. You had a preschool.
I did.
You know, I mean, that's a full-time job,
And
you were a
teaching.
babysitter.
And I will say,
And then you did add, though,
Daddy-
a child to the mix.
Yeah,
you did babysit
you did
as well.
add-
yes, we did. We had
Little
Aunt Pussy's
brother.
little boy.
Yep.
Daddy was very supportive, not only of me being at home working, but I mean, taking care of you guys, but he was aware of how difficult it was for me. It wasn't an easy.
Did at any point you want to stay at home versus
Yeah,
her?
we're like, we just flip it
She
out.
could pull in the bucks. I'd have gladly stayed.
Oh my God, that is so not true. Daddy would say I had a harder job than he did.
Yeah. You
And that
I
was
had
the
a
respect.
full-time
What's your
job.
mic?
I had a full-time job with a glorified part-time job attached to it. You know, and at the time,
Worked really hard and a lot of hours.
well, if I still have my old union contract in our desk at home. And when I look through that contract, I say, man, did we have it good? You know, we used to raise Cain with the company, but we had some benefits that were just crazy.
Yeah.
Thank
Not
God.
like that anymore.
I remember when
No.
first time I went to the doctor after being on your insurance after high school, and I was like, and they said, "Oh, your copay is $50 or something." And I was like,
10.
What the hell is $50? And I remember
Oh,
telling
your
Mom, like, they
new
charged me
insurance.
like
Yeah,
50, $80, and she's like, "That's what your copay is, what your new insurance is." And I was like, "I thought it was $10."
after Daddy.
Said that they're all standard
$10, and you've got 5 kids, and that's your copay.
That was.
I had so much fun. It was hard work. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but
Totally.
I had the best time. I loved every minute of my home at home. And when Mara came and she was basically an only child, with you being 11 at that point, it was, a one-on-one with her when I was home. I worked then part-time. It was almost harder having only one child compared
Absolutely.
to 4.
Yeah.
I
Morgan,
had to
it's
be
like
her
validated.
companion.
I'm not saying
You
I'm
know
not
that
saying
with
absolutely-
Angel.
Well,
It's
I
not
know that with
easy.
Angel because
You have to be the playmate.
I'm very
Yes.
lucky to have that Angel has cousins,
Cousins, yes.
right? And many of the, a group of the cousins are all under the same roof and of a perfect age where can be thrown in. So
He's just another.
I haven't, and I'm not. This is not to say to my sweet sister-in-law that she has an easier time than me. Absolutely not. But on the days when I get to have the kids, for an all-day Saturday, it is.
It
there's
makes life
It's
easier.
not a big deal. They're kind of taking care of each other.
They're taking care of each other, and I can say, go out and do the thing. Now,
Get out of the house.
Does my sister-in-law's evening and morning, is that
Right.
hell in comparison
Those
to me?
few
one
hours are
kid?
amazing.
But it is, yes, it's a very much a game changer, which is why with Angel, we are constantly having him with his cousins and his best friends. And for my, it's easier on me and it's easier on him, but anyway, but yes, completely understand.
So I did want to ask you, because like we were saying for this episode, a lot of fans, followers said like, oh my gosh, when we asked people, what else do you want to hear about? And people's just organic reaction to different episodes was like, oh my God, your parents are amazing. I want to meet your parents. I want to hear more about your parents. I want to hear more about like, what book did they read about parenting? And so I thought it'd be fun if I just kind of went through some of those questions that we got from people they wanted to hear. One of them was, one of our listeners, a friend of ours, is raising biracial children. Same mix as us, black and white. And some of it we covered. They wanted to know, from your perspectives, what was it like? But was there ever what was a time where, or I guess, how did you handle the race conversation? Do you remember did you bring it up or did we bring it up? Like asking questions, or was it just an organic? How did you talk about race with us?
I think Lindsay, she was the one that kind of had to, as the oldest, she took the first happenings and many
of everything. Literally
Yeah.
life.
I mean, it was harder for her, definitely. Mara had kind of the same after you guys had been in high school. Then she went to high school, first person, by herself. Lindsay was by herself as far as not having siblings with her in other classes. I loved Mother Seton because it was kindergarten through 8th grade. You wouldn't have been in school together for a lot of your years. And I wanted you to have that togetherness, that you supported each other. I shouldn't say we. And part of one of the first things, I think Lindsay was in 1st grade, maybe kindergarten. And one of the little boys said to her, "What are you?" And "What are you anyway?" And she's like, what do you mean? And he goes, "Well, what?" And I don't even know if he was able to say what
Articulate.
Didn't he ask her if
Asking.
she was adopted?
He might have.
I think.
My 80s are kind of a blur, but I do remember that one.
That's true. You would have had like a, what was
At that point, I had
2,
I had a
maybe?
kid.
If it
I
was
had
first grade?
Lindsay would.
You had 5
you
under
were an
5,
infant.
4 under 5.
in kindergarten. So she came home and mentioned it to me and said, so-and-so asked me what I am. And I said, "Well, what did you say?" And she said, "I am Lindsay. I am who I am." And I said, "Well, that was a great answer." And I said, "Do you know what he was talking about?" And she says, "No, she was not aware, but she was." And I said, "Well, maybe he was talking about your mommy and daddy, not what you are, but what your mommy and daddy are." And she kind of looked at me like, "Well, what does that mean?
Who the hell are you?"
They're mommy and daddy, And I said, "Well, I'm white and daddy's black." And she just said, "Oh, okay." And she didn't need any more than that. She didn't want any more than that. She just wanted to tell me that was a conversation that she had that day. It wasn't that she was upset about it. It wasn't that she, dwelled on it. She just wanted me to know. And I asked her too. I said, "Well, how did that make you feel?" "Okay, I'm Lindsay." I said, "Good. That's who you are. You are Lindsay." She was good. So, we kind of took it like that. I don't remember.
Like situational.
Situational.
Because like we talked about in the other episode too, when I did my star of the week, and it was the same thing. We're like, unless it was a full family thing, people were seeing mom at school.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Your dad's black?"
Yeah.
You know?
A photo.
Yeah,
Right.
he saw a photo. And I was like, yeah?
Yeah.
Like, so?
It was
and then I remember
exactly.
coming home and telling you guys.
Yep. And that was exactly the same thing. I said, "Well, what did you say?" "Well, that was a good answer." "Did you feel good about that?" "Yep." "Okay." Feeling out whether or not it was affecting you. If you
and
were
I gave
upset,
like the kid in a Catholic school answer where I was like, "We're all brothers and sisters."
Yeah. And, we all love each other.
Yeah.
And that was telling to me
That affirmation,
that
confirmation that you should have.
Yes, that we had a good place. What kid wouldn't ask?
Right.
Right.
That's child asking.
Right.
You do have to, there were times when you think, "Oh, well, also the time that, the N-word was used when I was pushing Lindsay and she was in the stroller and she was a baby. I mean, not a baby. She was probably a year old. You weren't born. I was
baby.
probably pregnant.
Yeah, she's a baby.
You definitely were.
I was definitely pregnant. And, it was, and I was floored. I was floored not because of the N-word, but because
It was a
that little
child.
boy was hearing that at home. And to me, that was just so sad. And how anybody could be like that. I couldn't, I couldn't register.
That's what I was going to ask when you guys were saying too, that when you're dating, and of course you're like, yes, in the small town, but people know you. And then you're like, even going into the big city of Frederick, you don't see a lot of interracial relationships. When you had kids, did you become more aware? More so, I guess, for mom, because dad's like, I'm a black person living in those spaces, but did you become more aware of not more aware of race in that how other people are seeing you and your family?
We saw it, I think, more in a positive way than anything, because I swear it would open up communication with people when we traveled. Because we wanted you to see other places. We didn't want you just to think that Emmitsburg was the only place there was. And so we went to New York, we went to Canada, we went to Florida. We didn't spend a lot of money in the sense that we went to California, we went into Mexico, that
Tennessee,
kind of thing.
Kentucky.
Yeah, we went to the...
That's a story.
But
we told it.
It just got released this morning.
But that was... We got more affirmation, and we were in the middle of Disney World. I mean, there's a lot of families, there's a lot of kids, and I can't tell you how many times we would be told, what a beautiful family you have. Right?
Because people were also, the ones that were in support,
I mean,
were also
you guys were
surprised,
beautiful.
right? To see it.
But, I mean, yeah. But I'm just saying, it happened to me, besides Grandpa being your...
Oh, yeah.
You're beautiful, you're beautiful.
Cheerleader.
God made... Why are you so beautiful? God made me that way. I mean, all the time. But the community where we would be outside of our town, in our little area...
Yeah.
It was always.
Yeah, it was a reminder that there are good people
And I used
that are
to
going to be
think,
supporting
yes,
you.
I used to think that has to
Even
feel
if you're
good.
not just here,
As
you
children.
can go out of the bubble and people are going to see you. And
Yes.
yeah, you'll deal with the shit, but you'll deal with the good too.
Well, and I think that's a reminder too. And Dad, I feel like you're about to say something, come back to you, but because with the theme of the pod being, welcome in, lead with kindness. It's good to, I hope, for others to hear that, in that, yes, there's some, because I think we hear about the really scary stuff a lot. And yes, there's really horrific, scary things that happen. And especially those scary things don't happen to as much. Shout out to all our, cis, straight male friends, followers, listeners. But it is nice to know that the good, there's a lot of good there. There's a lot of good that people are putting out into the world. And to hear that when you do hear something negative, and like Dad's example of like, well, Aunt Poozy shutting down the other nurse that was about to say something, is if you're not confident enough to say the positive, the helpful, the kind thing when someone says something nasty, if you're not confident to say it on your own, know that there's probably someone around the corner that is about to back you up if you bring it up. Or there's probably, because I said that same thing on the pod too. Like I remember
Allyship
getting
is a verb.
That, yeah.
Action.
And I remember getting from more than just people we knew. I remember the responses of people saying, your family's so beautiful.
And like we talked about that actually in the Pride episode that was released, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, about that when traveling, that we would hear it. Like we talked about in that episode, us going to Provincetown and on our trip to Cape Cod, and like, yes, we felt pretty good because we're at P-Town and it's like the gay community. So it's other people that are different, air quotes. But we remember hearing on that trip, not just in Provincetown, but in Boston, coming out of the Cheers bar, people being like, oh my gosh, your family's so beautiful. And so seeing it like in other places of the world, or country at least,
Especially
there's
when you're not
pockets.
seeing it, nationally.
Yeah.
You're not seeing it on the news. You're not seeing it on the TV
now granted,
show.
when we did see another mixed family, we would literally be shook. It was like a sighting of like a freaking...
I don't remember seeing any.
It was rare. And when we did, and sometimes it would be when we weren't with you guys necessarily, like if we were Rehoboth with Grandma, Grandpa, we're like, oh my gosh, look, they're mixed. Like we would freak. And we would see more mixed girls, and it was so funny because we would always be like, is that what we look like if we were a boy? Like, remember that? We would always be,
oh yes,
had that curiosity.
Yes.
But anyway, the other thing I was going to just ask is like, we talk about too, is like I asked about handling race when you're, that's more of the child, like the elementary conversations. As we get older, and like you mentioned, sports being a big lesson for us for many reasons. How did it feel as a parent when your kid's coming home and they received a comment, whether it was a friend in school or a teacher, an administrator? Like, how was that when you are trying to arm us with the response and the protection, and then you're seeing like, oh, this is a dose of what they're getting when I'm not with them?
When I first started, was asked to coach youth soccer in Thurmont, right? And I said, oh, I'm not so sure about that. I haven't coached soccer in years. I know something about it, but, the one gentleman talked me into it. And so I was there, the first couple nights are everybody's around, and you just run through drills, and then you have the selection process, the draft, I guess they'd call it. And you could tell people were standoffish, about me. It was myself and our friend Peggy, and we got into it because they were short of coaches. So Peggy says, you do it, you help me, and I'll help you, and we'll do a team. So, okay. So some people could just, they knew Peggy. They didn't really know me. They knew I was a black man, and they thought, I'm not so sure about this. Long story short, as the time went on and I stayed involved in the soccer program, people would actually come up to me and say, do you think you could get my daughter or my son on your team? I said, however it works out, that's the way, I can't guarantee. I'd love to have your child on my team. And the kids, I'm all about, just teaching, fundamentals and this and that. And so that was,
because again, like you said, they didn't know you. They knew Peggy. They're like, who is this guy, this black man that's going to teach my kids? It's again, there's not any other. They're perceiving it as something else.
And then there was, with regards to you guys, it was so tough to coach, and not because you're ours, so to speak, but there was so much talent there, and it wasn't displayed at the next level. And, people
the next level being high school.
Yeah. And so people used to come up to me at times, whether it be, because I knew so many people in the basketball community, and say, well, why isn't this done? Why aren't you using your girls more? And I'd say, listen, I'm a spectator. I'm a parent. If you want those answers, you need to go to the coaching staff and ask them what the problem is.
But you were also such a fair coach in the middle school level that you could have played your own children continuously because they were the really cream of the crop. Good thing. Well. You owe me a quarter. But it was, you were fair, and you said, no, this is where the kids all have to learn. So all of the kids got their chance to play, even though you could have played the better kids. Some of the parents would give you...
It was about winning.
It was about winning. And you were all about, it's about learning. It's about being better when it really matters in high school. So, I think that was a big part of...
Exactly. And again, people didn't know who I was. They didn't know anything about me other than, say, a few families that I had known all my life that lived in Thurmont, and they'd say... go to the local hardware store and ask, the Hobbs brothers, who they say, Rich Williams, great guy, and they always spoke highly of me, and they tell me about some of these stories and stuff. Mm-hmm. And of course, when basketball rolled around, when Gary was just a nice guy, hard worker, and when people would question Gary about, well, who is him? And Gary said, listen, let me tell you, this guy is the fairest guy you're ever going to have. So he's going to be the best coach at this level for your kids will have. And so I had a lot of support, just from the athletics community outside of the next level. And like I say, the one problem that I had with that I finally couldn't take it anymore, I went to the athletic director, and it was a situation where they wanted you to step down. And
so you went to the athletic director of high school for me, Stacey.
Yeah, and so I went there and I said, this is not about Stacey and her attitude. I said, you know, that team they're going to play in the playoffs, you can't beat them. If you don't want Stacey to play, guess who else isn't going to play? Katie Best's not going either. I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to split them. So he says, well, I'll talk to so-and-so, you know, done deal. And again, when that game rolled around, we played a neutral floor. They said, we don't care. We'll play you anywhere. You know, even though they were higher seed, they came up and played, you know, down at Tuscarora, played Catoctin, which they had the shorter trip too to get there, and it was not pretty.
Yeah, we got beat.
Yeah, it wasn't. But
That was one of the only times that you stepped in.
exactly.
But we
Because there
wrote
had also
many
been
letters.
there had been many racist
Many
comments.
comments.
made
But
during the season
we
by the
wrote many
coaches.
letters in the shower. I had many speeches prepared. I was ranting and raving in the shower, but I also stood by and my thoughts and of learning and being able to speak up when I'm not going to be there. Mm-hmm. And it was hard.
Yeah.
Sports was the learning experience that life really, it was the life learning experiences, the team, the coaching, the getting along with the others and being a team and not just
being a
and
team,
thank
going
God.
to
And I'm
practices
telling
each
you
and
what,
every day, and
they,
you know,
yeah.
and
Oh
come
my
home
gosh.
and
Year
take care of the
round,
studies, which you
year
all did a
round,
very
what you did.
good job at. I don't know how you did it, because back in the day when we played sports, we generally practiced maybe 2 days in a row, have a day off. It was not a continuous thing.
It wasn't every day,
in,
and-
out.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
You guys also, I mean, I played basketball. I didn't play any, year round. So you guys played year round. It was amazing. It was also, like I said, that was keeping you somewhat safe.
Keeping us active.
Keeping you active, keeping you out of the troubles or whatever.
Do you have a question, Mark?
Yeah, no, I was just, I think to moving away from a race a little bit, and it might take you a second to think of this answer. Maybe you know right off the bat, but like, what's your top parenting advice, or maybe to make it easier, like doesn't have to be just one.
Yeah,
your top couple,
like someone says to you,
parenting advice. What would that be?
I think that when just love, you just got to love them. And the hardest times are when that child is having their little tantrum or they're, change the mind. They're so easy to have their mind changed. They forget what they were upset about. And it's take a moment and let them have their moment. And it's truly, it is a teaching. And not when they're in that anxiety of that moment, but after. What were you upset about? What made you get so upset? Mm-hmm. To me, it's, again, the communication.
Yeah.
But it's truly knowing that they're loved so that they know that you're the safe place to come when they do have.
I was going to say, because I think that, but I think that's really what it was for us. And like having this conversation with you all and hearing like, it wasn't like you guys were having deep conversations about how to, manage this or that.
Read this book on
was,
this method.
Right.
No.
It really was
Learning
and is
education,
is the communication, is the openness of a safe place. And I think that's what, I don't ever remember experiencing it would be very rare that mom, you'd be at your wit's end and you'd be like, because I said
more
so.
adolescent.
But it would be because I said so.
We acted out.
I think that was it was
Teen years.
most often a really talking it through. And I think that is, and you see so much more about this now because of, social media, that you see these child psychologists talk about that exact thing of these opening up and having communication and allowing
Getting
kids
on the
to
level of, I'm
getting-
sure that does really upset you. Like
but
I was
not
laughing.
just
It's very
saying,
much.
don't do it, this is wrong, but understanding
No.
that they are new to the world and you need to teach them, explain, but also just let them feel safe to
Having
have
fun,
a tantrum,
laughing.
and know that it's not the end of the world.
Yes.
You
Right.
can
Yes.
bounce back
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah, I don't feel and there's always, every day is different.
Right.
Every day is different. But I feel like having that moment, the routine, even though every day is different, there was a routine.
And which is essential for having a bunch of kids.
Which was really
Well,
hard
essential
for
for a
you
child.
when that routine changed.
Still is,
In
which is
first
really
grade.
interesting. I'm big on
And
my,
that was
I'm
first
huge
grade.
on routine.
that's my ADHD though. I've learned
It
as an
was
adult.
such routine. This is what we did. This is how, not every single day. And that's why, you guys, when you would hear the phone ring at 4:00 and daddy's on the phone, you kind of knew the routine. Breakfast for dinner. I wasn't
Yeah,
cooking.
we were like,
I wasn't
Yeah.
grilling. I wasn't going to go out and, back then that's what we did. We did meat, potato,
we
and
didn't
vegetable.
celebrate it. We would be bummed. And
You
then
would be bummed that daddy wasn't coming home, but in order to get past that, it was breakfast for dinner, and that's what you guys loved.
Daddy's at the bar. I'm just kidding. That never happened. Oh my God, literally.
Never happened.
Well, what about that? So that's a great
What
tip
about
for I was going to say,
What was your...
for the elementary, I was going to ask Dad too, more
Adolescence.
specifically, the term girl dad, you hear now again, social media, it's like this trendy thing. And I joke all the time and say that to people that are like, we always tell them when they're like, wow, so you're one of 5 sisters? Like, oh my gosh, your poor dad. First, I'll let you just share your take on that. But then my second kind of question to that is like raising daughters. What are tips that you have? So maybe first give your little anecdote about how do you answer the question when someone says, oh man, you've got 5 girls.
Well, and I used to tell people, if somebody used to blurt that at me, and stuff, I'd come back with, well, I've been surrounded by women all my life. And they'd say, what? I said, I had 4 sisters, 2 brothers. I said, and then as time went on, the O'Brien family, they were all girls, 2 boys. I was around a lot of...
Well, and your grandmother was a big part of your life.
Yep, my grandmother, my mother, they I've been around, and even my aunts on my father's side, they always kind of checked up on us, when we were younger, especially after we lost our dad. Big influence, where people cared about you. The ladies cared to be around. And even when I got to the point, especially in high school and playing sports, I called them my additional moms. It was Mrs. Adelsberger, Mrs. Neighbors, Mrs. Miller. These ladies looked out for not just me and their own kids. They looked out for everybody. They made sure everybody was in a safe place.
Community.
Yep.
And you did that too.
Yep. And so when you're taught, it's part of you, it's easier to, put that out there and use it,
Right.
For your own benefit down
Right.
the road.
Right. Yeah, being raised, I would think too, being raised by, like you're saying, after Grandpa died, Grandpa Williams, like grandma's raising single mom, raising kids on your own. So that's also you see too, is the woman can do all things, But so then on the raising daughters,
Especially adolescents and beyond.
teen year, all of it. What are your tips? What if somebody's like, hey, your girls are so confident. What did you do, man?
Well, I think they saw how hard your mother and I worked, and that we had to, think through things. You just couldn't just, boom, we're going to do this, do that, You had to set up a plan on how you wanted to achieve certain things, because we were limited, our resources, having a big family, and one income. And so we had to be very careful how we did things, how we went about things. Like when we needed a bigger vehicle when Stacey was on the way. And so Joan says,
We had just bought a car, and it wasn't big enough then.
Your mother says, how's everybody else doing this? And then all of a sudden we got to think, at the end of the year, after that April 15th, we get this check back from the federal government. And so we said, you're right. why not claim that money early on, put another dependent or two.
We got a little bit more every payment.
another kid.
And it balanced out, and we could make the payments on a vehicle, so we nipped that in the bud, But you guys were exceptional. I'm going to tell you,
You heard it here first.
Myself and another guy at work, he had one daughter, and of course I had the 5 and stuff, but we would sit in our meetings and listen to all these crazy stories, what some of their young teenage daughters are going through and this and that, and so we walk outside and, to the trucks or staging area where we're getting ready to load up and stuff. And one time, buddy, he comes out and he says, "Rich, I just need to give you a hug." He says, "We're normal. We're normal."
Or you're not normal. Yeah, or you're not normal. You're exceptional.
Oh my
He
God.
says, "Can you believe that?" I said, "Well, yeah."
I think also, your father always showed respect to me. And
We had
I
a
think
standard.
you always, and I think he was an example for you of how you treat each other and how we treat
how you
each
guys
other.
treat
You guys
each
treat
other.
It was always laughing and joking.
Like your dad would come home from work. The first thing you do is say hi to mom, hug, kiss. It
Kiss.
wasn't like we didn't see you guys too also being affectionate and calling each other like, honey, I love you. You didn't hide I love yous.
It
Yeah, it
was
was very open.
respect and fun, when we had our off time, or not working
And
or
if Joni
whatever.
said, we're doing this,
We
and
had-
Dad say, okay. So we also I say that to joke, get in line.
Get in line.
Follow suit.
No, but I also remember, same thing where things were fun and laughing. I remember.
Yeah, we joked a lot. We had a good time.
I
We
think
always laughing. That's like dinner table. We had
was.
serious conversations. We also were like, all of us
Make
were
fun of
sharing our
each
day.
other.
All of us were making
teasing
jokes.
each other.
Yeah.
I don't, and I think if you learn that respect and caring, I can remember when you were young, and don't be mean to one another. You're going to be your best friends for the rest of your life.
Yep.
You want to have that love and that caring for each other. You as siblings.
Yeah, the sibling is the only, that's what people
It's
say
the
now,
only
the
other
only relationship that you'll have with someone that has
That
always
you-
known you.
and you has always known you, and that will
And
always
your
love you
experience,
and
that
love
you
you,
have
and
that
you know
shared-
each other,
right.
and everything that you've been through. And I think starting out with us showing respect for each other, and then having you respecting each other, I think you learned that was the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah, which we do say now too, because you guys would, it's interesting, because it's interesting what you say, and then versus also what I think, like I always receive, like, yes, the say please and thank you was always like a thing that was hammered into us in a good way.
And
like,
I mean, all the time.
yeah.
Yeah, it was less about
Like
you
it
have
was
to
more
say
about
it
you
to
saying
strangers,
it to
but,
other people. Like you're going to a
saying-
friend's house, you're interacting with someone that at the deli counter. You're just always again the respect piece was
Like you
big.
say, it wasn't about doing it with strangers. It was about doing it
all the time
to each other as
Like, can I have that,
siblings.
please? Yeah, you'd be like, please,
Yeah, and each
But
other as family
it was
members.
That, but I always thought it was interesting too, like with Morgan saying about how you guys would talk about your work days or your lives, and obviously there's conversations we weren't involved in. You weren't going to talk about subject matter that wasn't age appropriate. You didn't want us to hear certain things, but also just talking about with work, but also reminding us too, because you didn't work for 12 years. So like you went back to work when Stacey was in first grade. And so, but you also talked about work. Like it was you never said like, go find somebody that's going to take care of you. You also said you never know. You girls never know what can happen. And obviously we saw that with Grandma Williams being a single mom, not by choice. But it was always like, you never know what can happen. And you did mention too, people get divorced, people get separated. You always have to have, because while you weren't working, you always kept your nursing license up to date, knowing that you had a fallback plan. And you also had a way to go back to work.
And you always made it very clear that your hands were all over the finances. That it was like, I might not be working
Dad
right now,
might
but
be bringing in the money, but he's like, here's my check.
Yeah, like I'm managing this.
Joni sat, and in front of us too, though. You sat there at the kitchen table and you did all the books and you had your checkbook. And I remember coming up to you at that time because we knew that was the time too. And it was like, Mom's not going to play with us. Whatever, we may get to go watch a little something or be outside. Like, what are you doing? I'm doing bills,
Well, and
kinda
it
go
was
do your
also
thing.
that,
Same thing with shopping. Like, you'd cut coupons and let us go.
and it
use
was
them.
seeing that, Dad, hey, this is what we've got to spend right now.
Yeah.
It was like, it wasn't this like, oh, this, you're working, so you somehow think you
Yeah,
have
it
control over the
wasn't the
money.
house.
Or it was much the opposite.
It was
'Cause
funny.
we witnessed that at friends' houses. I remember being freaked the first time like a friend asked, like, we wanted to go see a movie or something. And the mom was like, well, you got to go ask Dad if he'll give us money. And I'm like, where the hell's your mom's purse? Go get the money. Like, and it was the same situation. Her mom didn't work. And so I was like, okay, well, this is weird, and I heard it other times. And I'm like, okay, well, you all were always like a team. Like, it was, sure, you could say they were gender roles, gender norms, right? Of like, mom stayed home and dad went to work. But then when mom went back to work, dad was cooking dinner when you weren't there and
Doing the laundry
and taking care of, the kids. And
Oh, yeah.
helping with homework. It wasn't
very
like
true.
it was just you doing everything.
I also did lawn and,
Weeding.
Oh,
we
yeah, it
did
was
the
more
weeding,
of-
the
it more-
garden,
it
the
was
cutting.
more of
We were
shit-
helping
stuff
each
just had
other.
to get
divide
done.
and conquer.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it wasn't
Things
that
But
needed
it
done.
wasn't like
Yeah.
you didn't know how to do it.
Right.
If that day
Right.
you had to do the other chores.
What's funny is when we knew that I was pregnant with Lindsay, I was still working, and so we started living off of just Daddy's paycheck and
Right.
saving the money that I was bringing home because we knew that's how it was going to be. Mm-hmm. That was the money that we ended up using to be able to build our house. We had the down payment, but it was the first time after we got married, and I said, here, you take care of the budget, because I had seen my mother. She was the budgeter.
Absolutely.
And my grandfather was a big budgeter, and he was an accountant, and so my mother was always doing the books the way
Well, and-
he did the books.
And grandma was a bookkeeper.
And grandma was a bookkeeper, so I was like, I'm over this. Let Richard, because he had his own. He did all his finances. We dated for 5 years.
Right.
And he's like, okay, that lasted 2 weeks.
Yeah.
He came home. He's like, how am I going to get to the bank? How am I going to go and do this? When am I going to have time to pay the bills? And I'm like, I don't know. I just thought
you
you
can't
wanted
just
to
go on
do
your
it.
phone
And,
like now. I
Yeah.
gave Joe that responsibility
I
too.
was like, okay.
I said, you take on doing the books. I'm tired of doing it.
Yeah, I don't.
And
I got to do the books. I need to be
I'm
the one
involved.
I need to manage the money.
I'm involved, but thank
I
God.
make Joe
Cousin
do.
Jessie does our taxes.
Yeah,
Thank
Joe
you,
has
Jess.
to do the organizing of all the taxes. And
Yeah, it's very much.
Oh, yeah.
Look, I'm
Richie-
seeing it all. I'm just not. I'm more like I
Richie
need to
does
make
the
sure we're on
taxes.
par.
I'm saying it in, it doesn't matter whose parent, you get that influence as long as it's
As long as
divided.
somebody's looking at the
Somebody's
books.
looking at the books.
And it's also teaching that there is such a thing as a budget, and that credit
Yes.
cards,
What's a budget?
credit cards
credit card
are
debt
not
is
just
really
give me the
scary.
credit card and I can
Yeah.
get in debt. No,
Yeah,
we've
no.
never had credit card debt. Tell
Yeah.
that story. When we went to get our first mortgage for the house.
Yeah, we go into the underwriter who was working. The government had so much money that they'd give out to people, first home buyers, and so we went in and we talked to the gentleman. He says, well, he's giving us a spiel on how it all works, and you couldn't have any little luxuries, like the house couldn't have a garage on it, things like that. And so we started telling him, he's
asked
asking questions
our
and stuff about
finances.
our finances, our money in this. And all of a sudden he stopped. He says, wait a minute. Do you have any debt? And we looked at each other and we looked at him and says, no. He says, you don't have any debt, no bills. No. Said, everything's paid off. I said,
Daddy had a car. I had a car. We had paid him off.
Your school was.
My school, I
So
paid.
this-
I worked and
Paid
paid
it
it off. My parents helped
this
a little.
guy
but-
gets on the phone and he says, hold on. He gets on the phone and he calls somebody, I guess.
In another office.
He says, you are not going to believe this.
Oh my God!
He says, I've got a young couple sitting in front of me that's actually debt-free. They don't owe a dime, anything.
He just wanted to
And
tell
we-
people.
Wanted to tell someone.
And I mean,
I
think
heard him
about
say-
it. At that point,
He says, I'm not kidding you. These people are for real. Says, yeah, they're here in my office right now. He says, I'll even send you you can call them. They have no debt.
Daddy was what, 27?
Yeah.
And I was 26, 25 when we moved.
You were 25 in the house.
I was even younger because you were
Yeah, we were
25.
20.
I was 25 when you were born.
When Lindsay was born.
Mom.
Lindsay was
30
born.
when
Oh,
I
okay.
was
So I was
born.
27.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was 30. You were 30 when.
Right.
30 was
I was
Stacey's
30
born.
when you were born. Jeez.
This is so easy for me to just add 30 to my age.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was pretty crazy.
But
We always had fun.
We always had fun.
We go out with all the families that we were associated with through basketball and softball
And school
stuff,
and
school and
Well, and
That's his
before that,
softball, his
you
team.
had your
His
softball
team.
team that we
Yeah.
all had
Yeah.
fun with, and
so we kept an eye on our money, and didn't buy anything extravagant. And of course, I used to drive your mother crazy because when things would break, and just go get another. So let me see if I can fix it. And I just absolutely always did love
Grandpa
to see how
too.
things work.
to tinker.
Yeah.
Tear it apart and see how it worked.
my
and
father
what I
too.
Yeah, and
You
yeah,
thank
didn't
God.
spend
Saved you
extra
some
money
cash.
on
But you
fixing
have
cars
to.
if you
And
didn't have
truthfully,
to.
That's like,
Yeah.
I mean,
That was the way.
Stacey and I praise that our Joes are that way. 'Cause
Yeah.
I
I'm
am
like,
not
my God.
curious. I'm Amazon at the ready. 2 days, it'll be here. New
Yeah.
part.
Daddy was always fixing something, toys.
No. Well, I think with that, honestly, I think we're at a really good wrapping it up.
Yeah,
But I
I
think my
agree.
last, I'm curious, final questions would be, one, and then I definitely have one final one. Has your perspective on race changed since dating and then having kids until this moment?
Say the big
Dad?
T word.
No, well,
Mm.
it's
He effed it up for the world.
Our former
That's
shitty
when it
president.
changed. Everybody became so much more thinking that
people were
can.
learning about one another.
People, you still had respect, and even though maybe there were differences, they weren't going to blurt it out in your face.
Yeah. There's
And now
a
they
megaphone put
feel
on
like
it.
they can put things out there and say things. I mean, having the American flag fly upside down is just, and that's all part of it. You know, that
and
whole-
the great divide is,
that really caused
what's your
a sad-
political affiliation? When we were kids,
Right.
Yeah.
No.
everybody
It's
went
really,
to the
I think of
polls,
that
you
now.
voted, and
It's
you
really
went
sad
and
how
ate
kids know
breakfast,
that more now.
Yeah.
And whoever was
And
elected,
get it.
whether it be a mayor or the president, you respected the office
Mm-hmm.
and went with
There
it.
were
It
plenty
might
of
not have been who
times.
you voted for, but we
Right.
respect it.
Right.
There were plenty of times when that person didn't get in, and we didn't appreciate him. And I can remember my mom, being very vocal about the big T before he was even in any kind of politics, because he was a New York person, and they were so hateful. Not hateful. There was no respect. for him. There was
Exactly.
never
No
respect, because they knew that he was a terrible business person. But the idea that it's become okay, in quotes, to say whatever you want.
Do whatever you
do
want.
whatever
Yeah.
you want.
Harass whoever you want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That
Assault
has,
whoever
and
you
that
want.
is sadly, and I know social media has certainly helped. I mean, we didn't have that when we were
Right.
but
it kind of puts a magnifying glass on who people really
and
are.
there's so many lies.
Yeah.
so many
Yeah.
things that are said that really aren't said.
Right.
People
or they
say
something-
things
right.
that
they say something that they probably wouldn't say if they didn't have
Exactly.
social media in between that and the other person. If you
or
were
they
in the
think
room,
that what they're saying is true because they've seen it supposedly or
Right.
read it on social media, and then you find out, oh, that's not true, that was
Right.
made up.
Right.
So that to me that has been
That's the biggest change.
biggest change.
There are
Terrible.
still so many good people.
Yes.
yeah,
Good
So many.
people that are out there and people that aren't born yet. And there's so many people who, in my case, for instance, you wouldn't believe the opportunities that I was offered and didn't take them. They weren't from black people. They were
Right. Allyship.
You know, it's like what's the vineyard down along 15?
Yeah,
Springfield Manor. I was offered that property.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Hold on, y'all be leaving right.
Daddy had so many opportunities offered to him, truly, because he was so well respected. And people thought that he could handle and he could do. And you're right, the difference in people haven't.
Saw me
there's so
and
many
your
good
mother
people.
and the family. We took care of the family, and people just said, "Wow, this is." You know,
There are so many good people still.
Right.
There really are.
Right.
And we are blessed in our family alone. You picked amazing. Our children picked, I should say. Our daughters picked amazing sons for us.
and not because we're on this little podcast, but
No.
people.
It's going to be
It's
huge.
not little,
He
it's
didn't
viral.
mean little. It's viral.
People say, well,
We're
how the
just
girls
blessed.
doing, how their guys doing, and all this and that. I said, let me tell you, I just sit sometimes and I thought, whoa, when I listen to their conversations and their input, what's going on in the world, I say, wow, man, they got more going on than I ever thought I think I had going on.
I don't know about
Yeah.
that.
said,
but
they are amazing.
You picked great people.
They're driven.
And there are so many people that it shows because the people around you in your communities want to be with you even more. They want you
Welcome
to be
in.
with them. Welcome in. And it's true. I mean, we're just really blessed. We're really blessed that we have.
Well, it is.
Well,
the
yeah.
feeling is mutual.
Feeling is very
as
mutual.
hell. We are so blessed, and so we say it all the time. We say welcome in, welcome in. It's this environment of welcoming. We joke that we have this fear of not including others from just being such an inclusive family where we were allowed to be who we are, and also like we talked about even in the Pride episode, you guys were aware of that you were supporting who we might become, even if we weren't showing signs of, what I mean?
Who our friends
you were giving us those
were, might
options, but
become.
you were very much like, you can do whatever you want.
I had a cousin.
Just be safe.
I had a family member who was gay, and it was a different time. It was very hard for him to be able to, come out into the world and tell his, and be himself. And we loved him. That was it. That's all I needed.
Right. Right.
Why wouldn't you accept someone
Right.
that's different than
Right.
you? Who cares? I
Right.
love him. That's all.
Yeah.
I met so many
Lead
wonderful
Lead with love.
people that, I didn't know they were gay. Who cares? I loved them. And then I found out they were gay. Who cares? I didn't care.
Great.
So
right.
why wouldn't, of course.
We need more parents, on the vibe
like that.
of Joan and Rich, because that's what's wild is now today.
You had one more question. Go ahead.
Well, and I did have one more question, but honestly, I think, and I'll ask it, but I think I already got the answer. And I was thinking in this moment was, what's your number one parenting advice? And I had asked it about more of the younger kids, but I think I'm going to say what I think you said, and you said again just now, is leading with love. And as I was about to ask it of number one parenting advice, and I think it's more than it's because I think a lot of people are, you think about, and we hear this all the time, how you were raised impacts how you are as an adult. And we know that. So yes, lead with love. But if you're the person listening to this that didn't get that love as a child, it doesn't mean you can't lead.
We've
as
got
an
a
adult.
home for you.
We've got
Welcome
a
in,
home for
welcome
you.
in.
Welcome
They
in,
raised
welcome
5
in.
and now have a couple empty bedrooms.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
No, but in all seriousness, it's it lead with love, whether it's for your child, someone else's, or for that adult. We all come into this world the same way. We're all going out the same way, and lead with love.
and we don't have a whole lot of time in it, do we?
No, exactly. So
Is
never
there
enough.
Any final words for the
Regardless,
listeners?
you're on borrowed time. You really are.
It's never enough.
quicker.
Yeah.
And we're blessed. And hopefully everyone, all of your listeners get to feel blessed. And that's,
Love it.
as long as they have
Well,
that.
thank you, everybody. We good to wrap?
I think
that
we're
was a
great. Rich,
spot.
any final words?
Well, one thing, wrapping it up from my perspective, just like when you guys all came to my retirement party, the one sentence I blurted out there right off the bat, and people thought, here we go, crazy Rich is going off again. I said, I've never met a saint, but I've met 1,000 sinners. So, everybody has faults. You can work your way through them and look for the best in people and the world has to offer.
Yep. And it's never too late to change. It's
Yep.
never too late to turn a
do
new
better
leaf.
and
do
be
better,
better.
be better.
Well, thank you,
Well,
Mom
with
and
that,
Dad, for
welcome
joining
in,
you.
welcome in. Love you all.
Thanks.
Thank
And
you.
Remember,
Love you.
review us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Do leave a 5-star review only. I'm kidding, but seriously, check us out.
Share and share, 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 share.
Let us know what you think. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
Divs.